Reality's Magicians, the Substrate Directive, Episode 2, Collisions of Code, a crisp alpine morning. Back at the clandestine research facility, Ebony and Julian prepared to take their investigations to the next level. 5 days had passed since the tense Zurich meeting. Dawn filtered into the lab through a skylight high above, the only place in the underground complex where one could see any natural light at all. Ebony tapped her foot nervously as she waited for the final alignment of the elliptical collider's magnets. The hum of the equipment was more ominous than ever. "We're about to push the collider to a power level that's never been authorized, Ebony," Julian warned. He hovered over the control panel, eyeing the energy readouts with mild panic. "Are you sure we want to do this now? A meltdown at these intensities?" She cut him off with a raised hand. "We're searching for the piece that merges prime fractals with observer consciousness, right? There's no other way. The standard power runs didn't reveal the phenomenon we need. If we're going to catch that ephemeral code thread, we have to force the collisions into deeper informational states." Julian eyed Ebony. Her normally calm demeanor had given way to an undercurrent of obsession. He could hardly blame her. In the last few days, they had discovered hints that the code behind reality might be viewable or influenced only when the observer's cognitive state was factored in. Ebony had been working on a top-secret extension of quantum mind theory that proposed the observer's neural processes could sync with the code's fractal structure. "I just hope we have adequate safety procedures in place," Julian said. "The magnet alignment is stable, but we're close to the red zone for energy capacity." Ebony allowed herself a small grin. "We have backup generators and a containment algorithm for the collisional data. Trust me, I triple-checked." With that, she flipped a switch. The collider roared into life beneath the floor, beams of hadrons accelerating to unprecedented energies. The observer's lens. Upstairs, in a glass-walled observation booth, Ebony sat at a specially configured console. She had integrated a novel brain-computer interface, an EEG-based device that measured her brain waves in real time. The idea was to feed Ebony's cognitive patterns into the quantum computing system that analyzed the collider data. By doing so, Ebony's conscious signature might become part of the experimental input, bridging the gap between mind and matter. "Are you sure about this?" Julian asked, standing behind her. "We're mixing your neurological patterns into the collision analysis. Isn't that dangerous?" Ebony shrugged. "We're already messing with cosmic code. Might as well see if consciousness is the missing link. The mathematics suggests an entangled relationship. If matter is informational, consciousness is the vantage point from which that information is rendered. Perhaps we can tune that vantage point in a controlled experiment." Julian's gut twisted. The line between groundbreaking science and madness had never seemed thinner, yet he found himself in awe of Ebony's bravery. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and nodded for her to proceed. Collision. In the subterranean ring, particles smashed into each other at nearly the speed of light. Supercomputers captured every iota of data. Ebony's EEG signals streamed into the system, creating a real-time feedback loop. The screens lit up with complex geometric patterns swirling across fractal backgrounds. The data was mesmerizing. Suddenly, a high-pitched alarm blared. Red text flashed on Ebony's console. "Anomalous entanglement detected." Julian rushed to a separate terminal. "What's happening?" Ebony's eyes were glued to the screens. "We're registering an unusual coherence in the collisions. There's a shift in the data whenever my brain waves spike. Look at these distributions." She pointed to wave-like patterns on the main display. "They're aligning with my alpha rhythms. This can't be random." The phenomenon was so stunning that Ebony momentarily forgot her caution. She closed her eyes, trying to relax, focusing on a simple mental image. A rotating cube. The wave-like patterns on the display responded, shifting into symmetrical forms. Ebony gasped, nearly disbelieving her own eyes. "It's as if the collisions are responding to my mental state," she whispered. Julian felt a chill course through him. You're observing, and the code is rewriting itself in real time to match your expectations. Ebony didn't respond. Her eyebrows knit in concentration. She shifted her mental image to a tetrahedron. The fractal patterns changed again, fracturing into a triangular geometry. She nearly toppled off her chair. "This is it," Ebony said, breathless. "The observer effect squared. We're tangibly influencing matter at the code level by aligning consciousness with the fractal substrate." Rogue echoes. Their awe was short-lived. The alarm suddenly changed tone, a strident beep echoing through the facility. Over the intercom came Dr. Chen's voice. "We have an unauthorized intrusion attempt on the mainframe, some sort of quantum hacking from an external node." Julian swore under his breath. "Can you isolate it?" "Trying," Chen said through the speakers. "But they're using a sophisticated encryption that looks suspiciously like Meridian. Ebony, Julian, you need to shut down or they might steal your real-time data." Ebony cursed. "We're so close. If the magicians get this data, they'll have exactly what they need." She looked at Julian, who was already pulling up the system's emergency shutdown protocols. "Let's do it," he said grimly. "Better safe than sorry." He initiated the procedure, but to his horror, the system refused to comply. Instead, garbled text scrolled across the screen. "Unable to shut down. Cipher lock engaged." "They're overriding us," Ebony said, her voice cracking. "They want the collision data, and they're forcing it to remain online." A pounding sense of dread welled up in Julian's chest. If they couldn't shut down, the collider would keep running. Ebony's consciousness would keep feeding into the system, and the real-time observer imprint would remain open to infiltration. The rogue entity, likely reality's magicians, would be capturing the entire process. "Then let's scramble the data," Ebony said with sudden resolve. She typed feverishly at her console, initiating a randomization routine. "If we can't shut down, we can at least create a noise field to mask the prime-coded patterns. That should keep them from extracting the final puzzle piece." The tipping point. As Ebony hammered at the keyboard, the fractal patterns on the screen distorted into static-laced chaos. But the collider itself continued to hum, now with an ominous rising pitch. A new set of alarms began to sound. Julian glanced at the readout for the magnet system. The field coils were overheating. "Ebony, the magnets are failing. If they go offline while the beam is at this energy level, the entire system could blow." He turned to the window and saw faint sparks dancing along the cable conduits. "We need an emergency vent of the beam, or we risk meltdown." She nodded, pivoting her attention to the collider's emergency vent program. But it too was password locked, locked by the same cipher that prevented them from shutting down. Ebony typed in every override code she knew, to no avail. The sabotage was thorough. The air grew tense. Chen's voice came back over the intercom. "The infiltration is too deep. I can't break their encryption in time." Julian's mind raced. The meltdown scenario played in his head. A catastrophic release of high-energy particles, radiation flooding the facility, likely a chain reaction that could ruin the entire installation. Possibly even tear a rift in the local space-time if the rumors about advanced collisions were correct. He had to do something drastic. "Ebony, keep them busy with the randomization. I'm going to physically sever the main line to the collider." Her eyes widened. "You can't do that alone. It's going to be more complex than flipping a switch." "It's our only shot," Julian said. He sprinted from the control room into a corridor lined with metal piping. He heard Ebony's muffled shout behind him, something about not being reckless, but he had no choice. The dark corridor. The corridor led deep underground, past multiple sealed doors that recognized his biometric pass. Sparks flared in the distance. The hum of the collider reverberated through the walls, making the concrete tremble. Ahead, a heavy metal door marked high-energy access blocked the path. Julian swiped his ID card. Red lights blinked, and the door hissed open. Hot air rushed out, along with an acrid smell of burning electronics. Inside, the noise was deafening. Machinery whirred, sputtered, and hissed. Flickering lights revealed a labyrinth of cable bundles. Somewhere in this snarl was the primary power feed. If he could disconnect it, or at least disrupt it, the collider would decelerate, halting the meltdown sequence. But he also had to worry about high-voltage arcs. One misstep, and he'd fry himself. He spotted the massive cable trunk overhead, leading to a junction box. That was likely the main feed. Without hesitating, he climbed a metal ladder to reach the box. Tools. He needed tools. He fumbled with an emergency kit on the wall, retrieving a heavy-duty cutter and insulated gloves. Interlude of danger. Julian placed the cutter's jaws around the trunk cable. The hum of current was so strong that the cable vibrated in his hands. Sparks flashed dangerously close to his face, and the heat forced sweat from every pore in his body. His heart thundered. If the cable carried too much load, severing it could cause an explosion. But if he did nothing, meltdown was imminent. He took a shaky breath. With a grunt, he squeezed the cutter's handles. Sparks erupted in a shower of white light. The cable snapped, and the entire corridor shook. Julian's ears rang as he was thrown off the ladder by the recoil, crashing onto the concrete floor. Smoke billowed, but through blurry vision, he saw the readouts on the control panel flicker and die. The main feed was severed. Moments later, the overhead alarm changed tone again, less shrill, more subdued. He felt the tremble in the floor lessen, as though the collider was winding down. Aching all over, Julian pushed himself to a sitting position. The meltdown might have been averted, but they were hardly out of danger. A fragile victory. Back in the observation booth, Ebony watched as the fractal patterns on her screen sputtered into a final swirl of color and then fizzled out. The infiltration lines of code from the unknown attackers also froze. The unstoppable meltdown scenario had been halted. She tapped the console, confirmed partial shutdown of the collider ring, and exhaled with relief. Chen's voice came over the intercom, relief palpable. Julian did it. We're stable. Reactors cooling. Magnets powering down. A pause. He might need medical attention. Ebony tore off her EEG headset and rushed to find him. She discovered Julian limping through the scorched corridor, coughing from residual smoke. His forehead was bloodied and his shoulders sagged. Ebony helped prop him up. "You're insane," she muttered, but her voice was thick with gratitude. They half stumbled back to the main lab. Stationed medics took over, checking Julian's vitals. He gave Ebony a faint grin. "So how's the data? Were we able to scramble it enough?" She nodded, forcing a reassuring smile. "We should have. By the end, the infiltration lines were reading pure noise. I doubt the attackers got the final puzzle piece, but they definitely know we're close to something." Julian closed his eyes, exhaustion sweeping over him. The entire facility was in disarray, lights flickering, personnel rushing. Yet Ebony sensed this was only the beginning of a more dangerous chapter. Their progress and the near disaster was sure to reverberate far beyond these walls. Aftermath and tensions. Over the next 24 hours, the facility's engineers worked tirelessly to restore partial functionality. The collider would need extensive repairs. Meanwhile, Ebony and Chen worked together to analyze any footprints left by the attackers. The infiltration bore the hallmarks of quantum hacking that Ebony had read about in classified briefings, possibly the same advanced group rumored to be behind reality's magicians. If they managed to intercept even fragments of our data, they might reconstruct the consciousness collision effect, Chen noted grimly. We're dealing with forces that have deep resources, money, computing power, and probably infiltration at multiple high-security labs. Ebony sighed, her eyes shadowed by fatigue. "We might have slowed them down, but we haven't stopped them." "And we still haven't found the final piece ourselves," Chen added, leading Ebony's gaze to a battered server rack that survived the meltdown. "We only glimpsed the effect. We didn't decode it fully." Ebony nodded. We have partial clues, but not the entire puzzle. If we want to beat the magicians to it and keep it out of their hands, we'll need to refine our approach. That means harnessing a stable, scaled-down version of the collision data that integrates consciousness. Chen frowned. The collider is offline for weeks at least. Maybe we can approach this from the theoretical side, or consider alternative ways to replicate the effect. Remote collaboration. They arranged a secure video call with Venko from a newly protected server. In the flickering feed, Venko's face remained calm, though his eyes revealed worry. "We heard about the sabotage," he said, voice echoing slightly through the speakers. "The Directorate has some protective measures ready, but we fear the rogue group is accelerating its plans." Ebony informed him of their partial success. "We established that conscious observer patterns can shift collision outcomes. We verified that the code indeed responds to mental states. But the meltdown forced a shutdown. We're still missing the key to full transpositional editing." Venko pursed his lips. "You realize if the magicians obtain that key, they can do more than small illusions. They can reshape entire swaths of reality. The Directorate is prepared to relocate you to a safer site, somewhere we can better protect your work." Julian, appearing on screen with a bandaged arm and a bruise on his temple, asked, "Where? Another underground facility?" Venko nodded. "An old Cold War bunker near Prague. It's been refurbished with advanced quantum cryptography systems. But time is short. If you join us there, we can continue the research under heavy guard." Ebony glanced at Julian. She saw the questions in his eyes. Did they trust Venko enough to sequester themselves in another hidden bunker, away from public oversight and moral accountability? Could they risk not doing it, given the threat that the rogue group posed? Finally, Ebony spoke. "We'll come, but we want explicit assurances about how this research will be controlled. No one person, no single organization should have the power to alter reality." Venko nodded gravely. "Of course, we'll draw up protocols. This knowledge is too potent to be wielded lightly." The call ended. Ebony found herself both relieved and terrified. They were about to delve deeper into a project that threatened to unravel or reshape the cosmos. Yet she couldn't ignore the shimmer of excitement. She was standing on the threshold of a discovery that transcended everything she'd ever known or imagined. She was grappling with the code that made existence possible, in the silence of the lab. That evening, as Ebony watched the damaged collider being dismantled for repairs, she thought about the double helix of DNA, a code that once seemed insurmountable. Humans had cracked it, manipulated it, turned it into a toolkit for genetic engineering. Now they stood on the brink of doing the same at a cosmic scale. If DNA modifications could rid humanity of disease, who was to say the cosmic code modifications couldn't rid the world of bigger ills, war, environmental catastrophe, or even death? But Ebony also understood too well the potential for catastrophe. Every discovery was a double-edged sword. Nuclear fission brought power plants and nuclear bombs. CRISPR brought cures and genetic warfare. What might universal code editing bring? She looked at Julian, who limped slightly toward her. "You okay?" He shrugged. "Healing. You?" She gave him a gentle smile. "Terrified, excited, uncertain. The usual, I guess." He nodded. "Yeah. Let's hope going to Prague will shed light, not darkness." They stood in silence, side by side, amidst the cooling machinery and half-lit halls. Underneath their feet lay the battered remains of a once state-of-the-art collider, a testament to how precarious their work was. Behind them, unstoppable forces vied for the secrets that Ebony and Julian were close to unlocking. And somewhere in the world, the rumored magicians waited in the shadows, ready to pounce on any sign of progress, to claim the cosmic code for their own. Little did Ebony and Julian know, the greatest mysteries and the darkest challenges still lay ahead. They had glimpsed the code that shimmered behind the veil of matter. Now they would be tested in ways they could never have foreseen, where ethics, reality, and consciousness itself would collide. Thus ended the second episode. The next would unfold far from these Swiss halls, in a labyrinth of secrecy and quantum enigmas, as Ebony and Julian raced to outsmart those who sought to bend existence to their will.